good evening, everyone, and welcome to Fitzroy Presbyterian Church tonight. My name is Miley Brennan, and I am on the Four Corners Festival Committee, and I'm so thrilled to have all of you here tonight as we have an evening with Dana Masters. And I don't know how many of you were at our event last year where Dana sang. She did a rendition of Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come. Brought tears to my eyes. Love Sam Cooke, so I am so excited to see what Dana has for us tonight. First, I'm going to do a bit of housekeeping to get us started. So, for those of you who have not been to a Four Corners Festival event, we're going to do a quick roll call to see which corner of the city everyone is from. So, if you are from South Belfast, where we are tonight, please raise your hand. Okay, so South Belfast. How about North Belfast? Yeah, I got some good representation. How about East Belfast? All right, and finally, West Belfast. Ooh, a little underrepresented. Yes, West Belfast. How many of you are from not Belfast at all? Okay, several. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. So tonight, we have a great program going on, but we also have some questionnaires that we would love for you all to fill out at the end. These are available online on our website and also on the QR codes on any of the banners that we have outside. Those questionnaires allow us to plan better for the future and also allow us to report back to our funders about the things that you all are experiencing at our festival, so it would help us out if you would fill those out. Additionally, all events at the Four Corners Festival are free, thanks to our very generous funders, and you also can help us maintain that free aspect to our festival. There are donation buckets outside, and you should have gotten envelopes as you came in. You can donate on the website. Please do not feel pressure to do so, but if you are interested in doing that, that's available. And also, in the very unlikely event of a fire evacuation, the stewards, those of us in these hoodies, will take you out straight back and then also straight this way. Very unlikely event. So before we actually get started, I have the absolute privilege of welcoming the U.S. Consulate General of Belfast, Mr. Paul Narain, and he has very graciously allowed us to ask him a few questions this evening. So if you could give him a big round of applause.
Thank you, Molly.
Okay, you want to go ahead and do an introduction real?
Sure. I have been the U.S. Consul General here in Belfast since August 2021. This is my 22nd year as a U.S. diplomat, having served all over the world. So it's really my privilege and my honor to be here tonight. I'm really, really delighted to see all of you here and to have this conversation. And I'm excited to see Dana Masters.
Absolutely. So I just have a couple of questions. The first question being, for those of you who don't know, in the US right now, it is Black History Month. Woo! And so thinking about the impact that the US civil rights movement has had around the world and in Northern Ireland specifically, is there any specific lessons that you think the people of Northern Ireland should know or have learned from that would be important to discuss?
Well, number one, just let me say, I think that we all learn a tremendous amount from each other through our lived experiences. And Black History Month and the legacy of the American Civil Rights Movement, which continues today, as we know, tells us two things. Number one, that it takes a lot of courage to do hard things. It doesn't matter how you describe that courage. You can describe it in terms of ethics, in terms of law, in terms of politics, in terms of religion. Whatever the case, that courage drives change. And that change is genuinely hard. You don't step back and say for a minute, well, it's done, we're fixed, and we're there. When you look at the challenges that our country faces at the moment, you know that that is a road we are still on. And so when I look at Northern Ireland, the lesson I would look to here and say is you're on that road. You've done incredible, extraordinary things in the last 25 years and longer. And we're with you on that road. We're still on it ourselves. Challenge yourself. Don't ever let anyone tell you that diversity is a weakness, that inclusion is a failure. That's a lie. We know what it takes to make society succeed. You know what it takes. That's why you're here tonight. And that, I think, is the lesson of our civil rights movement that I would hope we carry all around the world. Black History Month is an exceptional moment for us to reflect on the extraordinary achievements in American history of Black Americans and how much they enriched and changed and made great our nation. But it's a month. The dialogue, the progress, the courage, that's year-round, year after year, decade after decade.
Yeah, great, thank you so much. And going off of that, part of what inspired this specific festival this year was Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, right? And this amazing dream he had for the future of America. So can you talk a bit about how far we've come in fulfilling that dream and where you see us going forward with Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream?
The obvious answer is we've accomplished extraordinary things, right? I mean, I think you know this well. Our society is enriched by its diversity, and the very basic challenges that we have faced, the legacy of slavery, the challenges within our society of systemic inequality, those challenges were law, and we fought them, and we defeated them, and we've moved on. But you can see all the hurdles that are ahead, the events of the last week in Memphis, Tennessee. Look backwards to 2 years ago, look backwards to 10 years ago. This is not something where you take for a minute your eyes off the wheel and say, we're there, we got it, right? So when I look back, I'm deeply proud of all that the United States has accomplished in building a free, diverse, democratic society. But it would be a lie to tell you I think that either we are perfect, far from it, we have a lot to do, and I don't also believe that there's an endpoint to that. How can there be an endpoint in the quest to build a free, just, and fair society? You know that here better than anyone. And so you have to lean into it, fight for it. And I believe that in the United States, I think we're in the middle of that struggle. I'm really proud of us for not hiding it, shining a light on equality, shining a light on discrimination. And I can say, as a brown man who grew up in New York City, I have lived my life all over the world. It's been my privilege to represent the United States. But I know what it's like to be discriminated against. I've had it happen many times, systematically, individually, on the streets in different countries. I get it, and I felt it. And I can tell you that it is a level of hurt and pain that is pretty incomparable to most things that you experience in your life. And so I can tell you what that makes me is tireless as an American, as a US diplomat, and as a representative of my country, tireless in the quest to make sure that we are doing everything in our power as a government and as a nation to bring fairness, equality, and justice everywhere that we go. It's going to take a long time. It's not going to have an end. It's going to outlive my life and yours, but we must never stop.
Thank you so much for that. And speaking of, being a diplomat here, what are your dreams for Belfast and for Northern Ireland?
So many. Well, a few things struck me since I've moved here. Number one, I love it here. There's a quality to the way people live, the challenges that they have overcome that breeds a certain friendliness, warmth, and humility. And that's really endearing and attractive. But when I look back at the last 25 years, what I see is that you've accomplished extraordinary things. Too many people here spend too much time looking back with sadness instead of forward with hope and optimism. You should look back. What was accomplished is critically important to modern Western history, I would say to world history. A significant, long-standing, and awful and bloody conflict ended. But you have so much to be proud of, so much to be excited for. And one of the things that I can see here is an important reminder that the future that you build and the legacy that you leave, it's for your kids and your grandkids. And you want them to grow up in a place where fairness for every community, everybody of every religion, of every ethnic background, of both genders or none at all, that fairness is the reason we build and live in a free society. It's your free society, it's our free society, and we do it together. So when I look forward, I believe that you are firmly on that path, that there is work to do, and I would say this to all of you, lean into it. Let's get this work done.
Great. Thank you so much for your time and your answers. Everybody, give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and now I am going to hand it over to Steve so we can get Dana up on this stage. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Miley. Thank you, Paul. That was a little extra that we didn't expect. And I know there are many Americans in the house, so there's a wee surprise. In fact, you must be wondering, did I just go back home because every accent in this church is American? And if you're from Taylor University and you've just come in, that's a Taylor student. That's what could happen to you in a few years' time. You could be interviewing somebody at this kind of festival. So thank you so much for coming tonight. Dana is without question the artist that we booked earliest. She sang last year at the closing event, and about halfway through her second song, I said, I want to interview that girl next year. And I was delighted when after the event, 2 or 3 others from the committee came and said we should be interviewing her next year. So we booked her before we even finished last year's festival. I first saw her singing with a Presbyterian choir. Yeah. And next I saw her with Van Morrison. I thought, that's a shift. We might come to that later on. I think her voice is her witness, but she is a wonderful witness in her life as well. Will you please welcome to Four Corners Festival, Dana Masters.
I got a feeling that is bubbling up out of nowhere, baby. Maybe it's something I ate. You keep on talking so I can't focus. Please keep on talking so you don't notice the shake of my hands, my slow pace, the sudden urge I have to stroke your face. How can you expect me to stay calm when I am falling for you? My feet are telling me that I should run. We're about to reach the point of no return. How did I miss us all these years? Were these feelings always here? My heart is beating so fast right now. My palms are sweaty, think I might pass out. Getting in for a kiss. I'd never dreamt that we would come to this. How can you expect me to stay calm when I am falling for you? Talking this way, and suddenly I wanna kiss you all through the night. So dance with you by candlelight. Is it hot in here? I think I need some air. How can you expect me to stay calm when I am falling for you? forget-me-nots and Valentines. This is so cliche. I can't believe I'm talking this way. Suddenly I wanna kiss you all through the night. So dance with you by candlelight. Is it hot in here? I think I need some air. How can you expect me to stay calm when I am falling for you? I'm falling for you, for you. How can you expect me to stay calm when I am falling for you? Yeah, yeah. I can't believe I'm gonna say this right. I can't believe I'm gonna say it.
Fabulous. Oh my. Just to say to our streaming team that I'm getting messages on my phone that it's going out really well, so you just can relax and enjoy the evening out there. You're a lady of style. And
You like it?
Well, here am I, but yeah. We were just saying earlier, Dana was sound checking in a tracksuit, and Tina wasn't sure whether to interview you in the tracksuit or not, and I said, even in a tracksuit, I wish I could look like that in a tracksuit. But so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And what a week to bring you. You've been on TV all the time.
I have. That's really scary. Most of the time I feel quite exposed with my voice, but it's a different thing entirely when you're just staring at your face. And they had a premiere at the QFT, and I thought this will be fun. And I don't know if you'll ever have the opportunity to look at yourself on a movie screen, but it's not that fun actually. You see yourself in ways that you never wanted to see yourself.
Yeah, there's an advantage in looking like you rather than me in that one, I would think. But yeah, I mean, in case you haven't, My Name is Utterly has a documentary went out on Wednesday night, and last night you could get an iPlayer. Let's get the advertising out first. And that was very different because you became an anchor woman of a documentary, very different than singing, even though you were singing as well. How was that?
Do you know, in some ways it was so different, and I was terrified in a way that I haven't been in years, and yet essentially what I do with my music is really storytelling. And that was what that was. I am enamored with people's stories. I find myself very taken by how people's stories have shaped them and shaped the people around them. And a lot of times I find that most people don't even know that they have a story to tell. It's just so normal to them. So it was really incredible to focus on one woman's story and a woman who is from here, Northern Ireland, and tell that story to them.
Influenced the Rolling Stones, and
Absolutely.
what I've noticed this week is you kind of, when you're talking about rock music, you leave the over 80s out. And this week, my over 80s were saying, Ollie Patterson, I saw her loads of times, and I'm thinking, how cool are the over 80s to have seen Ollie Patterson?
I got so many messages from people, and they were like, I went to school with her, I saw her at this club and that club, and I went from thinking no one knew her name, and to realize that there are a few people who did know who she was.
So if you don't know, she was from Comber. She joined the Chris Barber Jazz Band, and that blues jazz of the late 50s, early 60s influenced the Stones and the Pretty Things and all those early bands. And she seems unknown to us. She's buried in Comber. I want to take you to the documentary, but first of all, when did you first hear about her? Did you hear about her before they asked you to the documentary, or did they come looking for you?
No, and I was really surprised about that, because when I first got here to Northern Ireland, I thought, I moved from Los Angeles, and I thought, great. no one from the industry is going to find me in Northern Ireland. The music industry is an interesting place, and I thought no one's going to ask me to do anything. This is a great place to hide out from the music industry, and turns out not so much. But I got to work with so many great blues musicians, jazz musicians here in Northern Ireland. That's how I got my start, as working in those circles. And that's why I was so shocked that when I was approached to do this documentary, that I had never heard the name Audie Lee Patterson.
I hadn't either.
Yeah.
And I thought I knew.
Yeah.
And now
You know a lot.
I don't.
I don't feel so bad.
So they came and approached you, and it seems to me from the documentary, and no spoilers, but you'll not, there's not many spoilers to it if you haven't seen it, but this cassette tape that they press right at the start and you're still listening to at the end, it seemed to me, as I watched it in the QFT, and it seems to me as I watched that, you were discovering her story as you went, rather than if I was wanting to do a documentary on Dana Masters now, I know a lot about Dana Masters, I would come with all those preconceptions.
Yeah.
You came hearing, and you can see in your face almost your emotional response to the wonder and the sadness of that. Is that what happened?
Absolutely, that's real. I'm not a good actress. I am the world's worst actress. You're like, act surprised. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so shocked. You know, I can't do it. So what you see happening in the documentary is real. I had not heard the story that she was telling. I did not know. For me, there were twists. I was absolutely and completely taken back by parts of her story.
And what resonated with you? Because you didn't expect to be part of the music scene, and I'm sure you didn't expect a little white girl from Comber to be a blues singer like the ones you knew.
Yeah.
So what resonates with you when you finish that story, and no doubt continue in it, because I've just got the first CD through the letterbox today, and I'll be listening to more as we go.
Yeah, do you know, there was so much that moved me in that whole process, but the thing that gripped me first, you know, growing up as a child in the South, I had a great upbringing. I really did. And it wasn't really until I left that I left the States that I think I really started to feel some of those ways that I had been treated as other, and some of those ways that I had been experiencing racism and prejudice, because sometimes it's just what your normals are normal. Do you know what I mean? And I think growing up with a family who was involved in the civil rights movement, so they were put in jail, they were beaten up, they were called certain things, whites only, bathrooms and water fountains. Those were the stories I was like, that's racism. So when I was a kid, what I experienced, I never really realized what it was. And when I moved here, I think I had a couple of years where I think I just cried a lot, because I had realized, oh, that really did hurt, actually. And I think the first time I heard Audie Lee Patterson, it was like a healing balm, because I was raised to love my people and my people's story and my people's music, and I knew that it was gold, it was wonderful, it was beautiful. And there were parts of that music like Motown that made it around the world, you know, all these people that are gifts from the African American community to the rest of the world. And yet, when I heard this little woman from Comber, Northern Ireland, this place that I now call home, sing the kind of music that didn't necessarily make it around the world the way that all the rest of it did. I mean, it did, but blues isn't the most popular Black American music. And she sang it with an understanding of the pain and the suffering that it was written in. I just felt so proud. And I don't know, I just felt like, thank you. Because when she did it, she was always very honoring to the Black American community. She was never, you know, putting it on, if you know what I mean. She felt, from what she said and what she wrote, she felt absolutely honored to be able to use that music as a vehicle to even express herself. So
I think it's interesting because this week particularly, every day is the same to me this week, but I think it was Wednesday night we were listening to stories, and they were our stories, but they were personal stories of other people, but they became our stories, and it was a very powerful night. So hearing other people where you're not expecting to sing about your world. There's something moving about that, which is why we continue to sing and do stories. So if we go back then, you've touched on it. When you were growing up, I can only imagine there was always music in the house. Who were the first singers you heard that you thought, wow, I really like that?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Now, no one in my family are musicians. In fact, my mom keeps trying to get me to do a duet with her, and I was like, dude, you do a lot of things well. But, no, I'm just kidding. But I didn't grow up in a family of musicians. But I don't know any black people that don't love music, where I grew up. I don't know.
I don't know any that are bad singers.
Well, I know a lot of them. Music is so much a part of our culture, like many cultures around the world. Music is so, it's not just entertainment for us, it goes deeper than that. And so the way that it's passed on to our children, I remember growing up, my parents' music wasn't uncool to me. I had my R&B that I was listening to and everything, but also Motown was constantly on play. And it never felt like, oh, this is my parents' music, it's so cheesy. It was our music, it was our culture's music. And so for me, Motown and funk and Earth, Wind and Fire and all that, that's the soundtrack of my childhood. But I do remember my mom used to love to play Anita Baker. And the thing about Anita Baker that stood out to me was, in the black experience in America, there is a lot of pain that we're processing, and we process it through our music. And one of the parts of our culture that was most damaged by these centuries of systematic racism and enslavement and all sorts is the family structure. And we all know that, and that's something that is healing and getting better and better as time goes. But when I was growing up, I actually didn't know a lot of my black friends who had mother and father in the house, and most of us came on what they called back then broken homes, and me included. And so when we sang about love, it was either like falling in love or girl, you look so good, kind of thing, or it was we're breaking up, things didn't work out kind of thing. And Anita Baker was one of the first black people that I knew that sang about a longevity of love. Like she talked about what her partner, it's been years and I'm still in love with you, and it's just like, and she majored on that. Now there were the odd songs from all Al Green, but she majored on that narrative of love. And I remember even as a little girl, it wasn't just her voice, which her voice is incredible. I think she's probably one of the first jazz vocalists that I ever fell in love with, and I didn't even know she was a jazz vocalist because she was marketed as an R&B singer in America. But it was more the story she gave me. She gave me a different story. Not a story that I lived, but a story that I could potentially hope to live. And that was probably the first time that I understood the power of a narrative.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how has that music changed? Because you've flitted about quite a lot. You've gone north, you've gone west, you've come back east. You've nearly done the four corners. What are the influences now as you do what you do now?
Wow, that is a question. I'm one of those, I don't, as a musician, I think it's really, really difficult when you ask a musician, who's your influence, I would still say Anita Baker is at the heart, like I am probably most subconsciously influenced by her. But deep in the DNA of myself as a songwriter and as a singer, I could never escape the music that I was raised on. And no matter what I've discovered as an adult, at the end of the day, I was raised on Motown, I was raised on R&B, I was raised on Chaka Khan, I was raised on Earth, Wind and Fire, I was raised on Stevie Wonder. These were the people, even more so than gospel music. Gospel music was not played nearly as much in my house as these other types of music. And that is probably my core structure as a musician. I experiment and I go off and I love all these other things, but that's what I was raised on. Later on in life, I think my parents tried to get a bit sophisticated and like Al Jarreau showed up and stuff. But that's my core.
Wonderful. Sing us a couple of songs.
Yeah,
maybe.
absolutely. Can I introduce you to Cian Boylan? Nearly all these songs I'm going to sing for you tonight, we wrote together. So, yeah. We've been working, we've been busy, and baby, we've forgotten those long summer days when we did a whole lot of nothing. And we would talk and we would fight just so we could make up. We stayed up the whole night just to see where it took us. And wouldn't it be so nice to slow it down for a while? Let's remember how this started. And let's get lost in our own little cloud and forget the world is turning. Let me waste your time. I swear I'm worth it. I just wanna see you next to me. Come on, come on, come on, we'll be doing just fine. Nothing but love. Don't overthink it, darling. Ooh, baby, let me waste your time. Oh. No more craving, no more faking. This is what we've wanted. All the going, all the waiting. We've been doing this for too long. And it's our time, and it's alright. Let's turn the noise up. It's our chance, you and I. Baby, this is our love. And wouldn't it be so nice to slow it down for a while? Let's remember how this started. And let's get lost in our own little crowd and forget the world is turning. Your time, I swear I'm worth it. I just wanna feel you next to me. Come on, come on, come on, we'll be doing just fine. Nothing but loving. Don't overthink it, darling. Ooh, baby, let me waste your time. I swear I'm worth it. Hey, just wanna see you next to me. I say, come on, come on, come on, we'll be doing just fine. Nothing but loving. Don't overthink it, darling. Ooh, baby, let me waste your time. Thank you. Am I allowed to talk in between the songs, or I can only talk with you? Okay. Tonight I chose my songs on purpose because I knew the conversation that we were going to be having. And one of the things that I do when I write music in response to my own family's story within the civil rights movement and their struggle was I like to major on things that maybe they didn't have time to major on, things that my grandmother didn't have time to do because she was too busy fighting the good fight, and things like love and falling in love and the uncomplicated nature of that. But this next song, Keenan and I wrote together. I wrote the lyrics, and I don't know, you probably wrote the rest of it. I don't know what happened. But I wrote these lyrics because it's funny when you grow up in a place or within a people that have experienced trauma, a lot of times that response is to level up on resilience. And sometimes that looks like we take our emotions and our needs and our vulnerable bits and we pack them up and we put them in a box and we put them up in the attic for another day because we just don't feel like that's something that we can do. It's a luxury we can't afford. And Black Americans that I grew up with, that was a large part of our story. And I remember being an adult before I could ever say to someone, I need you. I was brought up to be so self-reliant. Do for yourself. No one's gonna do for you. You do. And it almost felt like a sin to need somebody else. And so this song is actually called Need You. Cold hands wake me up in my bed from the trembling of a nightmare. It's a welcome reverie. In crowded rooms where voices carry like perfume, your brown eyes still refuse to let go of me. I shouldn't need you like I need you, but I need you. And to hell with all the rest. I shouldn't need you like I need you, but I need you, and it's all that I have left. And we move slow from the safety of a shadow. Deep inside, I know this is all I'll ever need. And you pull me deep as your weathered hands, they tend to me, pruning my dead leaves till I learn to live again. I shouldn't need you like I need you, but I need you, and to hell with all the rest. I shouldn't need you like I need you, but I need you, and it's all that I have left. They'll never know the hills we ran through. deserts and hostile lands to just hear the sweet, sweet lullaby of a quiet night. Cold hands wake me up in my bed from the clutches of a nightmare. It's a welcome reverie.
And Cian Boylan, sorry. You open your mouth, and this thing happens that last year in St. Peter's, there was tears falling down my face almost your entire set. Michael Bublé, not good for my street cred, but let me quote Michael Bublé.
I love Michael Bublé.
Yeah, I think you should.
We do. We love him, don't we?
I think we should be allowed to. Yeah. There's nowhere in the Bible says you're not allowed to like Michael Bublé. He said that they were driving along in the car and they were singing along as a family when he was about 7 or 8, and he opened his voice and they all kind of went. I mean, when did you know that when you opened your mouth you had this sound that not everybody has the ability of doing? When did you catch that on?
I didn't, because, I mean, Paul will know this, growing up in the States, like, I was never the best singer in the room. I grew up around monster voices, within the gospel church. I mean, I was like, I'll be in the choir, I'll back you guys up. So I never had, like, a low self-esteem about it. I just never considered myself a sanger, as they say. They don't say you can sing, they say you can sang when you can really sing. And I knew I could carry a tune, but actually the moment that I had wasn't about my voice. I knew, for me, from a very young age, because when you grow up in church, you get to sing on stage from a very young age. They put you on stage as soon as you can say something, you are on the stage. And for me, I remember singing one of my first solos, and when I stepped on the stage, the only thing I can explain it as being is I felt this very intense connection with everyone in the room. And I felt this sense that when I was singing, it was as if I was able to express what everybody was carrying in a way that they maybe couldn't. And so that was the thing that felt, I knew that no one else was describing that experience to me. None of my other friends who were singing were ever describing that being the experience. And I knew that for me, that was something that felt unique. Not that it doesn't happen to anyone else, but it felt.
So it's a pastoral vocation. You're singing, you're carrying other people's.
It's almost like, it almost feels like intercession, if you will. It feels like, we used to have this old gospel song. It's not an old gospel song, it was actually kind of a contemporary gospel song. But a woman named Babby Mason, I don't know if you ever came across her, but she did like gospel music in the States. And she had this song called I'll Be Standing in the Gap for You. Just remember. And I always felt like whatever stage I was on, not just church stages, I always felt like I felt like I was a go-between nearly. I don't know.
And then, you went to Minneapolis to pursue a degree in music. Was that with the attention? Were you ambitious enough to think there was a career in that, or why? What were you going to do with your music there?
No, I try to explain this to people here. In the States, like unless you know what you're gonna do, and it's gonna you're gonna be like a neuroscientist or a doctor or something, you literally just go and study what you're interested in. Because you could get if you have a 4-year degree. I went from that music degree and went straight into commercial real estate in Los Angeles. Like it's not as tied in. You have to do this. I felt like actually what was most important was that I got really good grades and I finished in 4 years. That was the thing that people looked at when they were going to hire me. So when I went to university, I just thought I want to study something that's going to keep my attention for 4 years.
And there's rumors of Kanye singing with Kanye. Is that?
That did happen.
How does that happen?
Do you remember when Hurricane Katrina happened? Yeah. And we have this tradition in the States that when there's I don't know if they do it so much anymore, but it was a lot of when I was growing up. Whenever there's a natural disaster, something where they needed people to donate to a cause, and it was very quick. They would do these, all these musicians would come in and perform on television, and all the people in the back with the phones, just on the phones, talking to people, taking money. And so they were doing that for Hurricane Katrina in LA. Well, when that was going on, I just scared myself and thought maybe it was a different disaster. Anyway, there was some disaster. I don't know. Do not quote me on it. Do not go look up. There was some disaster. And whatever the disaster was, Kanye's regular singers could not make it to him in time. It was literally he got phone calls on me the next day. And I had been singing by just accident. Everything was by fluke. I'd been singing at the House of Blues for their Sunday brunch with a small group of singers, just having fun. I was their backup singer. They were way better than I was. And they called them. They said, we need singers for Kanye for this show. And next day, I'm in the room with Kanye West, and Jesus Walks was the song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And did you think real estate, maybe it could give that a miss and head with Kanye, or?
No, because, it's funny. I am not the type of person that it takes a certain type of person to enjoy the music industry. It's not a bad person. It's just a certain type of person that industry energizes them. And I'm not that person. I don't, small talk really, honestly, I'd rather pluck out my own eyes than have a bit of small talk. That's why I like you, because we've never had small talk in our lives. You don't even know my kids' names. We just went straight to, the civil rights movement. And so, that kind of thing. I always felt like I couldn't do music because I didn't see myself in the industry, and the music business was a certain type of thing that I just thought maybe that isn't for me. So I did that thing with Kanye West, and I had another run-in with the producer of the Pussycat Dolls, which, you look at me, I'm not a Pussycat Doll. Do you know what I mean? If you don't know who they are, don't look them up. You're not knowing.
Please don't.
No. No, it's not. It's nothing weird, but and so there was always these brushes with that world, but I always felt like I was leaning out of it just because I didn't really feel like I saw myself in it.
When you met Andrew and you came to Northern Ireland, you leaned back so far that you just fell off the chair altogether. Is that what you thought?
I leaned back so far, I fell into Van Morrison's band.
Yeah, I mean, that is what I said at the start. You're with this Presbyterian choir, and then the next to see you, you're with Van Morrison. I'm thinking, that's a shift.
Yeah.
Because actually, the interesting thing is, none of the rest of that choir were with Van. So how did that come about? How did you just drop into these things as you talk about?
Yeah. So I told you, I got my start singing with all these incredible jazz people in Belfast, and they tolerated me because they wanted to play jazz the way they wanted to play it. But I think they realized that they would get a larger audience if they had a singer come in and just do the odd song, right? And then between those songs, they could play whatever they wanted to play. So I was the token singer that came in to do the odd song. And at one stage, a mutual friend of ours started this thing in McHugh's bar in Belfast, downstairs, the oldest bar in Belfast. And it was packed every Sunday afternoon. Well, here I am, married to my husband, we're starting a family. We already have one child, and I was heavily pregnant with twin boys. I mean, honestly, I couldn't even pretend anymore that I wanted to be there. I was so tired, so annoyed. I would sit on a stool, sing my songs, and go hide in a corner somewhere. And one day, our mutual friend came up to me in a flap and said to me, listen, I don't want to make you nervous before you have to go on and sing. And I was like, what? He's like, now listen, don't freak out. I said, okay, what's happening? He says, Van Morrison is here. I said, okay. Who is Van Morrison? And I think he was there because he was looking for a new backing singer, but I was heavily pregnant, so he came for a while, a few weeks or months or whatever. He came every week or every other week or something. And then I went off and I had my boys, and about 8 months later, I got a phone call from his office, kind of like, are you done raising those children yet? Can you? So that was the beginning of that, yeah.
One of our congregation here had a phone call from the same office when he drove into the back of her on the Newton Arts Road. So, you're singing with Van, and many of us are there, or at least we were there for the 70th, which was an amazing thing, bottom of Cypress Avenue and Van Morrison's 70th birthday. I mean, I watched it again this week in research for our interview, and just the very idea that it happened is a moment, I think, in music history. But I'm watching you, particularly there, where you become Cliff Richard because you're singing "Whenever God Shines His Light," and I'm trying to watch it. I'm thinking, is this exciting or absolutely terrifying?
For me,
yeah, because Van,
yeah,
he doesn't do it by it is jazz. He's moving about stuff, and he's bringing a feeling in, like one of the next songs, Hindford Street one, The Eternal Now, and you felt the Holy Spirit was actually on the street at that point. What's it like to be in those moments with Van, and is it always exciting or a bit nervous as well?
Yeah, I mean, you know the old saying, ignorance is bliss, and I think because when I was growing up, we had such rich music at our fingertips. We weren't hurting for music. I genuinely did not know about Van Morrison, you know, because I always joke and say, I now know that people call him blue-eyed soul, right? But then when you have when you have soul, you don't go looking for blue-eyed soul. It wasn't like I heard him and I didn't like him. I just genuinely
didn't need to hear him.
It didn't get to my parents. And funny enough, now my whole family, because they have gone to so many Van Morrison concerts in the U.S. They love him, but it was like they were like in their 50s and 60s, like, who is this? You know, we just didn't know. And so for me, the ignorance is bliss. I didn't have probably the same. I would imagine if I was on stage with Stevie Wonder and he started singing like "Isn't She Lovely," I would nearly be too afraid to sing it with him. I'd be like, am I allowed to put my voice next to this man's voice on this song? Like, it would almost be a bit too sacred. Because I didn't have that, it was beautiful for me because I was discovering his music as I was learning his music to do his backing vocals. So for me, and because I grew up in church where you did have these like Holy Spirit moments,
Yeah.
I felt really comfortable. I was like, oh, this is incredible. When he would stretch out on songs and people would be feeling all sorts of things, it felt normal to me. It felt.
Do you think really, when you say it like that, you maybe got the gig because it wasn't as precious to you, whereas it was more precious for others?
I wouldn't even begin to try and understand why I got that gig. I don't even try, just whatever.
But it was a good time in your life.
It was an amazing time. I learned so much. I think I needed, it was nearly 7 years. I think I needed that to fully accept that I am a musician and this is what I am supposed to be doing. It took that long.
I'd like to sing again, but you talked about, and he set his head down, he's maybe falling asleep over there, but you know, when you're writing with Cian, I almost was going to just take the microphone over to him, because you're coming out of something where you've never heard of Van Morrison, because you've no need to hear about Van Morrison, and Cian, you've come up out of a different, in some ways, upbringing, or not upbringing, but musical influences in your life growing up in Dublin. So writing together, are you learning from each other? How...
Cian's teaching me.
No, I can say...
This is unscripted, by the way, so he doesn't know he's being asked anything.
I was just having a lovely little sleep there. Well, no, I can safely say it's a very, very easy writing partnership with Dana. We just, some people you click with, some people you may not click as well with, and some people you may not click with at all. And whatever our combined musical influences, a lot would be probably very similar, to be honest with you. And then, everyone's got different aspects to, actually I would have listened to a lot of Van, but I probably shelved those while we were writing together. It's just very, very easy working relationship and writing relationship from the word go. I think on our first session we probably had about 4 songs by the end of it, did we? I think it helps when you've got similar likes, but just enough that you can throw someone in a different direction, and then when they respond to that, which Dana did instantly, it's such a joy, really.
Sing again, Dana. I'll take that microphone off you, brother.
I don't want to sing.
Yeah.
You don't need it.
This song is a really good example of actually something being written from a place where both Cian and I have a lot of commonality in what we love. And I came to Cian one day and I said, the world is so complicated. We can sort of major on the darkness a lot. You hear we talk a lot about what's wrong. And we know that life is complicated. And I said, I kind of miss, those romantic comedies like When Harry Met Sally. We all knew it didn't work out that way, but it was just lovely to watch the simplicity of that story. And then it was made even better by a man that we both are very much in love with, Harry Connick Jr., doing the soundtrack to that. So I came to Cian and I said, listen, I want to write a song that celebrates that simplicity of just maybe love going right. Do you know what I mean? The romantic comedy love. Let's write a song that Harry will be proud of. And this is what we came up with. Like somebody in love, I feel the sky is opened up, and it is strange how a cloud feels like a smile when you're somebody in love. feel like somebody in love. I feel the sky is opened up, and it is strange how a cloud feels like a smile when you're somebody in love. I feel like somebody in love. Never been one to open up, so it's a mystery to me how I could be suddenly craving your touch. Lonesome, never felt lonely in silence. Just how I long to be, but lately all I can think of is, are you still thinking of me? So maybe I'm somebody in love. And it's true what they say about love, that it starts like a seed and grows quietly till you're somebody in love. Somebody in love. And it's true what they say about us, when the sweet little voice gives you no choice, then you're somebody in love. In love. I feel like somebody in love. He speaks to me in whispers, silent reveries, and with his words he kisses truths beyond his reach. His youth so very old, but oh, the life he holds. He speaks to me in whispers, words that bring me home. He walks with me in whispers, strength and quiet strides. Solitude is mistress, beckons him inside. A universe untold to call his very own. He walks with me in whispers and silently unfolds. whispers, prefers the space between the known and the imagined, a dream of what's unseen. Within his gaze I feel broken and yet healed. He looks at me and whispers he's revealed, and whispers he's revealed, and whispers he's revealed.
Let's take you South Carolina home. And growing up, you've shared some of that already, racism, etc. When did you first realize that there was issues because of the color of your skin?
I don't know, I think for me, it had less to do with the direct someone having an issue with the color of my skin, and more to do with I remember at a very young age feeling unpretty, and that everything that made me me physically wasn't considered beautiful. So everything from the kinkiness of my hair, to the wideness of my nose, to the darkness of my skin, to the flatness of my feet. You know, everything. You know, I just remember feeling like I just knew at a very early age that I was not desirable. Not like I was a child. I mean, culturally, that the culture didn't celebrate me.
Wow. Wow. I haven't come to it from that angle, and that's really interesting. And did you share that with people at that stage, or was that something you had to grow with into adolescence and beyond, or?
I don't remember articulating it at that stage, but I also remember I didn't think it was unique to me. You have to understand that it's very complicated. It was very complicated, and it can be. The way we celebrate blackness in America today isn't the way it was celebrated when I was a child. When I was a child, I remember you were considered more desirable if you were lighter skinned. And there's a lot of cultures where that is, you know, the case. And that came from centuries of being told, basically, that blackness is bad and ugly and ignorant and all that stuff. So the lighter you were, the more accepted you were. The thinner, the longer your hair was, or the less coarse your hair was, the more accepted you were. And oh my gosh, if you were light-skinned and had blue eyes, for goodness sake, you know, you were like God, you know.
And that's coming from what? I mean, that's coming from a pop Hollywood culture of the blue-eyed blonde, and
I don't even think it went even deeper than that. I mean, when my grandmother, the one who was a civil rights activist, my grandmother was half black and half white. Her father was a white man from the community. And my grandmother was very, very fair-skinned and had ginger hair. And she was offered the opportunity to go north and pass for white. So that was a thing that families would do because they would think you could have a better life. But in order to do that, you would have to cut your family off. It was done. You would never speak to them again. And my grandmother didn't want to do that, and she stayed and ended up becoming a civil rights activist. But so that, I don't think, was necessarily a pop culture thing in that way. I think that is literally the residue of slavery. Yeah, I mean, in so many ways, when you think about slavery in the United States, the thing that was, it's going to be strange for me, the thing that was least damaging was the physical enslavement. It was the intentional mental dismantling of a people.
Dehumanizing.
It was absolutely that. To the point where we are now recovering from self-hatred, that thing where within the Black community we would judge you for the color of your skin. That wasn't given to us. We didn't, people aren't born hating their skin. That was taught to us. And so I think that's where I think this culture reinforced it. It came from all different ways, but I do believe it probably ran deeper and further back than what I was just seeing on television.
And when then did you, I love that name of your granny, Johnny Ruth Jenkins.
Johnny Ruth Jenkins.
Johnny Ruth Jenkins.
Yep, it's a proper Southern name.
It is. So when did you become aware that in your family people were doing something about this racial thing?
From the word go.
Okay.
Like I don't remember not being aware of it. My mother was very strict. I wasn't allowed to listen to hip hop. I was not allowed to listen to hip hop. It was not okay. It was inappropriate. But at the same time, one of my earliest memories is walking around my house and passing the coffee table. And in the States, we have this magazine. It kind of looks like the Time magazines, but it was bigger, and it was called Life. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? Life magazine was massive. And this particular magazine had on the front of it a black and white photo of basically strange fruit. Black men hanging from trees, surrounded by members of the KKK, some of them unhooded, some of them still with their hoods on. And that was the front cover. And things like that were never hidden from me. So I couldn't listen to hip hop, but on the other side, I was never naive to the story. It was obviously intentional that I was supposed to know from a very early age that there was something to fight for. There was work to be done, kind of thing.
And was there something then for yourself to do in that at that age? Was it that expected that you would become an advocate in some way? Would you have to? Absolutely.
I mean, I remember Dr. King's birthday became a national holiday when I was a child, like as in you got out of school for it. And up until that point, I was always off school for his birthday, even though I got marked absent, because we were marching to the state capitol to demand that it would become a holiday. And then after it was a holiday and we all got off of work and school, I still had to get up out of bed and go listen. And honestly, we went to the state capitol and there were readings of his speeches all day long. And as a child, I was not impressed, okay? I'm not gonna sit here and act like I was like, oh yes, for the people. I was so angry because I wanted to sleep in like everybody else. And we were always at marches. I say we, I'm an only child, but my mother and her sister are best friends, and she has 3 daughters. And my aunt took up my grandmother's sort of mantle, and she is the matriarch of the family. And we joke with her, she's still doing the Freedom Fund. She is still doing the work. And honestly, we were always somewhere as children we did not want to be to do the work. And as we got older, though, we started to appreciate it.
Faith must have been a part of, in general, that whole ability to get through. Well, we're still getting through it, as Paul has said tonight. We're on this journey in America on racism and here and different things. Where did faith? I mean, you're saying you're being dehumanized. Did faith rehumanize you, or was that something that was difficult to do? Or
no, it's funny. That's kind of a complicated question. I grew up that even though I knew that I was not considered beautiful or pretty or even as valuable on some level, the women who raised me, I did have a deep sense of value. I considered myself highly valuable. That was how we were treated within our family. That is how we were taught to carry ourselves. We were taught to bow our heads for no one. and to serve everyone. And so, in some ways, would I say it was faith? I think looking back on it, I think it was the women who raised me were living out a more authentic faith than many of the people who were going to church around me. And so maybe in that way, yes. But it was Black women who believed in their own value, who taught me how to stay humanized and to not dehumanize other people around me.
I thought it was a useless dissertation until this week when I was researching this. I did my master's dissertation on James Cone, friend of Martin Luther King's. He has a book called The Spiritless and the Blues, where he goes into all these things that songs have that have political, spiritual, and social transformative power, really. And to quote a couple of the things, Bernice Johnson Reagan from Sweet Honey in the Rock, she said, how important were the musicians during the civil rights years? They were crucial. You couldn't call Black people together in any committed way without a ritual that involved enormous amounts of singing. The singing was used to create the climate to get people ready to address the issues. The song leaders were absolutely essential. Mahalia Jackson gospel music had given the people courage and spirit when they were in danger. And Martin Luther King Jr. himself, an important part of the mass meetings was the freedom songs. In a sense, the freedom songs were the soul of the movement. Was that your experience? It seems that the songs weren't only there to gather a crowd and warm them up, but it was part of the transformation. Is that accurate?
I mean, when you look at the history of music within the Black community, you think of when Black people were enslaved, messages were passed through song, through old Negro spirituals. So singing wasn't just entertainment. What you were singing was life or death. It was instruction. It was a call. It was saying it's safe, it's not safe. Come now, we're leaving this time. And that is the history of the power of music, I think, within the Black community. And growing up, we were absolutely raised in that tradition. You know, when we're marching to the State House, we're singing "We Shall Overcome." Black community singing together is something that we do in order to remind ourselves who we are, where we came from, and where we need to go. It's the way we pass on our story. It's the way we teach our children. Even now, I see myself with my kids being more concerned that what songs I'm teaching them, right, than other people that I know. But I think it comes from that thing of like, it's funny, you can say I'm not a musician, but every single one of us has like a few songs in our heart that in times of deep trouble, they just sort of come out. Could be something your granny sang you or whatever. And for me, those songs were put into me by my family and my community.
Yeah, I like to think that if Jesus is Lord of all, then he's Lord of my playlist. And that's more than keeping naughty songs off my playlist. It's putting songs on my playlist that will transform lives. So I think that's important. Sing us a couple more songs.
This is a song that I wrote. My grandmother had 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. My mother is the youngest of all of them. And they were all, part of the civil rights movement. I don't know that they even had a choice necessarily. It was just part of their growing up. And when my mother was around 9 or 10 years old, those children were the first children in their county to desegregate their school system. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing they did. Looking back, I don't think they knew what they were doing. They just didn't want to walk. The other school was just so far away, and the white school was in their back garden, and I think it was one of those things like, we won't have to get up as early if we go to the white school. And my grandmother said to them, "Do you want to go to the white school?" And they said, yeah. And she said, all right, well, let's go. And for the next how many ever years, they did that. And it was hard. And it was cruel. And it was more than any child that I know should have to do. And I often think it's kind of like going to war. You know, when they send soldiers off to war and they come back, even the ones that come back alive, not everybody comes back in one piece, and that's not just a physical thing. And my aunts and uncles, my mom weren't unique. They were, when you think about it, who had to desegregate the schools in America? The adults couldn't do it. It was all children. And not every one of those children came back whole from that experience. And my aunt was one of those kids that did not come back whole. And that experience set her on a trajectory of just a life where her heart was broken beyond repair. And my aunt just died recently, and my grandmother passed away before her. And I found myself imagining if my grandmother could write my aunt a letter, if she had thoughts on how things went down, if she could speak to her about the pain she carried for the whole, I wondered what she would say. And my grandmother, I don't think was the type of woman to carry a lot of regrets, but she was very honest. And so I used my imagination to pen this song, a letter from my grandmother to her daughters, particularly my aunt, and this is called Little Girl. Little girl, this letter I write to you, it won't be enough for you. Forgive me, little girl, I thought I should explain. I never meant you to have this pain. Please forgive me. Love grows tattered, stretched and worn. And in your little world, well, I hung the stars and moon that you could never live up to. Oh, you believed me, but it's a crazy world. Saints, just the fallout from choices made. Baby girl, believe me, 'cause love grows tattered, stretched and worn, spread to keep you warm. Please forgive me. Oh, darling, if I knew then what I see clearly right now, if I knew then, baby, what I see clearly right now. Little girl. Thank you. Thank you very much. Keen and I wrote this song together. It's called Rising. It's actually really important to me because growing up, I had a single mom for a lot of my childhood. She worked 2-3 jobs just to make sure that I was well-fed, warm, well-educated. And we didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of extracurricular stuff, although we had a great time together. We weren't doing things like going camping and stuff like that. So I grew up, and outside was, I didn't do nature. And then I married a boy from County Down who grew up in the Mourne Mountains, spending the night out there on purpose. And he wanted to show me his world. And even though I wasn't that into outside, when I got to see nature through his eyes, this townie, as they call me, fell in love with what I learned from being around nature. And so this is a song called Rising. Sun is rising, the very same he does every day, and he is still shining even when the clouds are in his way. Moon is glowing, humming her sweet mellow refrain, calling the waters to come gaze on her face. And I am undone, 'cause I want to learn to live like this, allowing the simple magic to steal my heart again. Wind is blowing, cooling the heat of what has been, moving and shifting till what's left is all there is. And the trees are dancing, 'cause they have a secret hidden within, always trusting after death a new life will begin. And I am undone, 'cause I want to learn to live like this, allowing the simple magic to steal my heart again. The rhythms of the world are moving control. And I am undone, and I want to learn to live like this. Allowing the simple magic to steal my heart, steal my heart, yeah, steal my heart, steal my heart, steal my heart, steal my heart again.
Darn it, but we're near the end. So you're in LA, and there's this white dude. And I'm thinking actually, you know, as we've gone through the evening, I'm thinking of that little girl who didn't think she was pretty. And probably didn't think she was pretty because white people were pretty. And it's a white guy that comes and I don't know what happened to him, but he's not here, so I can say what I like.
You can make it up.
I can make it up.
I won't correct you.
Tell me about that. I mean, that's. Did you ever imagine you would marry a white man and come and live in Dramara?
Absolutely not. Yeah, that was unexpected. No, you know, the way I grew up, my mom was always very intentional about making sure that I was in situations where I wasn't just going to be surrounded by people who looked like me. It was very important to her that I learned how to navigate the wider world. And so I was in quite a diverse setting constantly, whether if it was at school or church or any of the groups that I was a part of. It was a very diverse upbringing. And so I wasn't, you know, I think also, you say a white guy and I still go, did I marry a white dude? Because my aunt, she had this thing now since she's grown a lot. I mean, as you can imagine, when you grow up in the Deep South and you grow the way they did and they encounter such direct racism, and I mean hatred. My grandfather, who wasn't really involved in the civil rights movement, spent his days working in a factory for 12 to 14 hours and his nights on his porch with his shotgun because the KKK were coming to burn crosses, they were coming to throw stuff through the window. So we're not talking about someone calling you a name. You know, we're talking about growing up feeling like your life was threatened. And it took my aunt a long time to sort of realize that, you know, not all white people were throwing things through a window. Anyway, and I remember she used to tell us when we were young, you're not allowed to marry a white person, right? So then I was terrified bringing this boy home for Christmas, his first Southern Christmas. And
how scared was he?
Do you know, if you know my husband, he is nearly, I see now where he gets it from. He's almost too stubborn to be afraid. Do you know what I mean?
We do.
You know what I mean. And we arrive and we have a great time and he charms everybody and my cousins are sitting there and they, as cousins do, want to cause a bit of mischief, and they said, "Oh, Mom, I thought you told us we weren't allowed to marry a white guy. What do you think of Dana's boyfriend?" And she very quickly was like, "He is not white." This is what she said. He is not white, he's Irish. But I got the sentiment because I think what they saw was that how difficult, particularly in the South, I always knew it growing up also when I had friends, and I always knew, I mean, I grew up and I knew that I had really close guy friends whose parents loved me, but if we ever dated, it would not be okay. And I think you don't want that for your child. When you see your children, you think the best, like anybody would be lucky to have them, and to think that they would potentially be in a family with even one person who thinks that they're not good enough. It was her way of saying, I don't want you in that, but she is in love with my husband, actually. I have to...
Yeah, fend her off.
I do.
But you decided to come to here, and it is very different than either the Deep South or LA, for sure. So how was that coming here? And can I ask you, not only in your early days, but since you've come here, racism in Northern Ireland, how have you found that?
Well, when I first moved here, honestly, I think because of the way I was raised, we were raised to be comfortable wherever we were. We were raised to go into situations and ask questions. And so we were raised to go away from home and have adventures. It's funny because my aunt, even though she works very heavily in the African American community, also works within the Indigenous American community. And I mean, this is just how we were brought up. When I came here, I did have enough confidence in myself and my own likability. I know that sounds really horrible to say. This is when my Americanness comes out, when I start complimenting myself in front of people. But that was like my one talent in life, was being likable, you know? And it really worked. And when I came here, what I actually found was that this place felt familiar. I think I'm still trying to process exactly why that is, but I think we are very similar. The Black American culture, and I think this island, the culture, and there is a general culture that emanates from this island. It has to do around hospitality. It has to do around being grounded. You are not gonna get far if you think too highly of yourself. Do you know what I mean? There is something that it is common across this entire island. And it is very common within the Black American story. Even the dark humor, people who have been through really hard things. I got here and I thought you all were hilarious. Even when you were joking about things that other people say we shouldn't joke about. It's that laugh to keep from crying kind of thing. And there's something that felt really familiar. I understood how to move throughout, because in a Black culture, your elders are very important, and you respect your elders, you honor them, you feed them first at the table, and when they speak, you know, when my grandmother was still alive, I could go tell on my mother to her, and my mother would get properly in trouble. Do you know what I mean? And I see that particularly in rural Ireland, that matriarch status, that granny still has the last word even when her children are grown. Those things felt really familiar to me. And so I genuinely didn't feel that sense of culture shock. As far as racism, I don't think that I would... I've never lived in Belfast in Northern Ireland, and I do know people of color who do live in Belfast who have different stories than me. So you have to understand that. Don't hear my story and think it's everybody's story. The biggest city I lived in here in Northern Ireland was Lisburn. When I came here, I had a ready-made family waiting for me and a ready-made group of friends. They were my husband's people, so there was that. I didn't have to, you know, try to nudge my way into something that was already established. And then also what I found is living rurally, and people are way more concerned with whether you're kind. than, you know, the color of your skin. And I find myself being a bit of a novelty. But when you come from the South, when you're just so hyper aware of your color all the time, you're hyper aware. Being here, people are aware of your difference only in that it was interesting to them. It was something different, for goodness sake. Like, I live in Jamar, like.
Not even, I mean, you just live at the back end of nowhere of you.
We don't even live in Jamar. Jamar is the big town. That's what we go to Jamar for our big shop.
It's quite a treasure hunt to get to your house.
So I find that where we live, people pride themselves on being open to me and being curious about me. And I think in all of my 14 years, it was one time that someone said something rude about the color of my skin. And that 14 years, I mean, I don't know, that's actually quite good for me.
Well, I mean, to say your husband is a pastor in Vineyard Church, and that's part of what you do. Are there any other, I was trying to think, are there any other pastors' wives that made a career in singing?
I don't know.
I mean, we know, you know, there's the Reverend Al, and he's doing that bit. But I wondered, is there anybody like yourself who's been doing that career alongside a pastor? Because they're quite different jobs.
They're very different jobs.
Yeah, and so...
I have to behave myself so as not to get him fired. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, how is it? I mean, to do those different jobs, one's very much within a community, and one's very much touring the world. I mean, how easy is that to work through?
I think for me and Andrew, we just know that we respect the different callings that we each feel we have on our lives. And no, we don't know anybody else doing life the way we've done it. So it's hard to get advice or to see yourself or your story in other people. But this is the life we live. This is the life we've chosen. He respects my job sometimes more than I do. And I absolutely respect what he gives his life to. And I think at the end of the day, what's really funny is we both are quite passionate about the same one thing. And it's about when we die that we leave this place better than we found it.
And where you are, you're kind of doing that. And I mean, I went out and spent a morning with you, which was wonderful. And you were talking about some of the relationships. I mean, rural Northern Ireland, and here's the charismatic Vineyard, white and black marriage up the road, and Catholic communities, school, everything else. You've integrated wonderfully into that. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, we moved out to where we are about 5 years ago to build a house and all sorts of stuff. And my husband was brought up within the Protestant community in Northern Ireland. And then he married this Black American girl from a civil rights background. And then we ended up moving to a predominantly Catholic area. And our kids were really young. And immediately we had this conversation, where should they go to school? And it wasn't really something we talked too much about, except for we knew that different people would have different reactions to it. But for us, it just made sense. We care about living in our community. Like, what's the point of having a house and living somewhere if you don't have people around you, if you're not part of the community? And right down the road at the bottom of our mountain is a little community school, and it happened to be a Catholic school. And we just thought, what are we gonna do? Drive past that school to put our kids in another school, but for what reason? And then I think the other thing we thought about was, how can we say that we wanna see something different in Northern Ireland, that we wanna see a Northern Ireland that celebrates one another, that acknowledges one another's stories, if we're not willing to do that at the very basic level of our lives if we are willing to live a segregated life. And so our kids went to the local Catholic school for about 4 years. And that was a massive learning experience for everybody. But I will say that that community, I think no one ever talked about it, no one ever said it, but we knew that there was like a level of trust between all of us, because that was a big thing to do. And our community knew it was a big thing to do, and they rallied around our kids. They made sure that we felt welcomed. They made sure that we were involved in everything, that we were included in everything. And that was it was like moving to Northern Ireland again for the first time. Yeah.
So your dreams then, is it more of that? You've sung about your grandmother letter for her daughter, and Nora's back there somewhere probably watching something on a tablet or something because she'd be bored with us. What's your dreams for them, and what's your dreams for that little community you're in and the wider Northern Ireland?
Yeah. I dream of a time in the future where the most heartbreaking parts of the story of this place are not the loudest stories we tell, because we have things that we accomplished together. It doesn't mean that those stories disappear. I grew up in a family where you cannot allow the stories to disappear no matter how painful they are, because we learn from them. We are who we are because of them, but they're not our loudest stories. I think for me as a Black American, my loudest story isn't slavery or segregation or Jim Crow laws. My loudest story is a story of resilience, of strength, of overwhelming love. The things I learned by watching the people I love sacrifice for a better future. I want my kids to grow up. I want them to want to live here in Northern Ireland because I think it's an amazing place. But I want them to have been all around the world and know this is a good place. I dream that we as a people here rediscover our value and our worth enough that we begin to demand better from ourselves, from one another, from our leaders. I dream that the excitement of the hope of what the future could be outweighs whatever benefit we have from holding on to the past to the point where it anchors us and keeps us in places that we don't really want to be and don't serve us well anymore. I do dream that my kids will raise children in a Northern Ireland that is known for its hopefulness and for its courage. And I dream that your children's children tell stories of the sacrifices you made so that they did not have to live the same story and carry the same weights. That is a deep dream that I have for this place. And this is my home now. I cast my lots in with you all. And I want to do everything I can to help that future become a reality. And sometimes I think the only thing I can do is just raise my 3 kids to hope and to want better and to treat people well, no matter what their story, no matter what their background, no matter the color of their skin, to do essentially what I was taught to do in South Carolina.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dana. Beautiful. Beautiful. I think you should just sing.
I'm going to sing 2 more songs for you. The first one is one that I just thought about today. And it's a gift I want to give you. And I remember when I was growing up, it's one of the first songs I was taught. And I knew it as the Black National Anthem. And even as a young child, I remember these words stirring my soul. And I think you have songs like this too, from this place. Songs that remind you where you've been, but also remind you to keep looking forward and pushing forward. So this is the Black National Anthem, otherwise known as Lift Every Voice and Sing. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. And stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod. Fell in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers died. And we have come over a way that with tears has been watered. And we have come treading the path through the blood of the slaughtered. And out from our gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. And God of our weary years, God of our helpless tears, you who have brought us thus far on the way, you who have by your might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lost my way in a desert land, searching for somewhere I could stand. High and dry, I crossed the sea, Wasn't looking for a home, but home found me. The wide open arms of your hills pulled me in. I fell for your charms and your wild northern winds. And then you lay me down and whispered soft and sweet, I'll be your home if you let me. I lost my way in a desert land, searching for somewhere I could stand. High and dry, I crossed the sea. I wasn't looking for a home, but home found me. The wide open arms of your hills pulled me in. I fell for your charms and your wild northern winds. And then you lay me down and whispered soft and sweet, I'll be your home if you let me. With nothing to give I had, nothing to bring, still you held my hand and eased my suffering. And when I close my eyes, I still hear you breathe. And with every sigh, you give life to me. The wide open arms of your hills pulled me in. I fell for your charms and your wild northern winds. And then you lay me down and whispered soft and sweet, I'll be your home if you let me. As you hold me close, I whisper quietly, I'll call you home if you let me. I'll call you home if you let me. I'll call you home if you let me.
Cian Boylan, Dana Masters. You may be seated. There is it's in conversation. It's not a concert. But I tell you what, I'm going back to see if I can get her back. But the next time she comes, you'll have to pay for her. So, which moves me nicely to say, if you've got an envelope on the way in and you want to sponsor or donate to the festival, please do. We're very thankful to our funders for allowing us to do this, but it costs a lot every year to do it, and we also want friends of the festival. You can give to us every month all year round or put one donation in. There's some of you I've seen all week. Number one, you must be exhausted. Number two, don't give every night. But if you feel that that was worth something, maybe drop something in the bucket on the way in or become a friend of the festival. What an amazing night. what an amazing festival we've had. But again, round of applause for Dana Masters, Cian Boylan. And there are some refreshments, so head out here and say hello to each other. Thank you.